Welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you're joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. I want to speak to people today as a fan. I think a lot of times when I speak to you, I don't speak to you as a fan because I don't really view a lot of things as a fan. Being somebody who has played sports, who's participated in theater and concerts and singing, and I'm used to not being in the position of the fan. And so when you're not in the position of the fan, sometimes it's difficult to resign yourself to the way fans are looking at things. But that's not fair to the fan. And I can't act like I don't know what it feels like to be a fan, because I do. I really do. There have been times where my love for my admiration for my need to see something go well because I like it has clouded my judgment when it comes to how I should evaluate or look at things as a fan. Not as professional, but as a fan. And as I recognize that our space in media now is populated with what I refer to as fanalists. These are people who make a good living, have a platform, have shows, have newsletters, have blogs, have websites, they have podcasts where they, as a fan, have become a media source. What they do best is operate like a fan. What they do best is give people the fans' point of view. But, and there's always a but, right? We're not the same. We're not the same. What I do and how I approach journalism is not from a fan's perspective. So I am not benefit of the doubt guy when it comes to anything. I am, this is what you've done, and this is what I think you can do. Because as the evaluator in me, as the analyst in me, I project it forward. I say this because there was this small exchange back and forth on Twitter yesterday with a couple Giants fans. Shout out to the entertainer, who does a great job in his space, has a fantastic following, really has a love and a knowledge of all things Giants. I think he actually has a good grasp on the game, and I think that he most times looks at the game objectively, but he doesn't look at the Giants objectively. And one of his things that he does, which is I think part of his shtick and what people like, is he constantly takes shots at players who are no longer with the Giants. For whatever reason, they didn't work out with the Giants, and so take shots at them. Now, me and who I am and what I do, I just don't like it, right? I don't like it because I feel like it's low-hanging fruit. Like, why take a shot at a guy that you no longer have to deal with, has no bearing on your team? And that brought up the Kadarius Toney situation. Kadarius Toney is a wide receiver who was drafted by the Giants, the last regime, and who has a lot of talent and is a fantastic football player, a talented football player who didn't work out in New York. His rookie year was tumultuous, and then injuries, and then his second year didn't really get on the field, apparently clashed with coaches, and then they traded him. Okay, cool, right? All of that can't be on Kadarius Toney. Yet, fans, like the entertainer, would have you believe that all of it is Toney's fault. I just don't understand that. Like, it takes two to tango. And if I'm willing to admit that Kadarius Toney has his issues and had his issues and had his reasonings, and maybe even New York was right to move on from him, even if like I'm willing to say that, by the way. He just didn't work in New York. Cool, boom. Move on. They got a third round pick for him. I guess you just were cutting your losses, but a third round pick for a first round talent, not really that great, but okay, cool, right? New regime. You didn't draft him. So you don't have to feel any type of way about it. Also, it opens up some money for you. But then Toney goes on to Kansas City and immediately is a factor. Now, people bring up injuries, and I think this is the blind spot where fans can't help themselves, right? Like injuries are not an issue for one person. Injuries are an issue for everybody. Until this year, the quarterback for the New York Giants had injury issues. And you think that if you continue to allow the quarterback for the Giants to continue to run the ball 100 plus times a season, that he's not going to get hurt? He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Lamar Jackson. So the idea that injuries are only a concern for one person and not for another person, and somehow that devalues, is just silly. Everybody is one hit, one step, one move away from an injury. Everybody. 1 year without an injury doesn't absolve you from injury concerns, because everybody has injury concerns. But it's interesting that they bring up Toney's injury concerns, but not anything about Daniel Jones. Here's what I know. At the University of Florida, people said that Kadarius Toney had some character issues, but the coaching staff were able to figure out a way to make it work. They were able to figure out a way to have him be not just a part of the team, but a really valuable part of the team. He got to New York, and even though he had some issues, the previous staff found a way to get him involved in the game plan, for him to be a part of the team, for him to be, if not to his full potential, somewhat effective. In Kansas City, they found a way for him to be a part of the team, to be effective, to be trusted to put out there in high leverage situations. With Brian Dable and Joe Shane, they could not find a way for that to happen. It's okay to say that they didn't get it done. It's okay to say that they failed. We see these types of things all over the NFL. It's okay to say that the coaches are wrong, that the general manager is wrong. We operate whenever we want to like disassociate ourselves with someone's opinion. We always go to, well, they're around him the most. They have more information than we do. So I'm going to lean on them. Why? We all have eyes. We all have eyes. Some of you people are really out there with the idea that Isaiah Hodgins is a better wide receiver than Darius Slayton. I can't help you. I have eyes. I have eyes. Some of you will look at a situation and go, oh, well, the front office must know something we don't. Yeah, they know something we don't, but we all have eyes. We all have eyes. We all have them. This idea, I'm gonna show you how blind spots from fandom come up, right? There's this new phenomena in the NFL where running backs aren't valued. You shouldn't take a running back in the first round. You should never take a running back in the first round. That's what they say. There's no value of a running back in the first round. Yet, at the exact same time that they tell you there's no value for a running back in the first round, they tell you that the running back's peak is within the first 5 years of their career. With that being said, then you really should take the running back, the high level, the really good running back. You definitely should take that guy in the first round. Why? Because the first round is when you're going to get the max amount of potential out of him. From ages 21 to 26 is supposedly the peak of the running back. So if you're drafting a guy who's 20, who's 21, and he is a Bijan Robinson, right? And he's a Saquon Barkley, why would you not take that guy in the first round? Because now you have him locked up for 5 years, which is his entire peak. Lock him up for 5 years, franchise tag him for a sixth, and if you don't see the value after that in re-signing him, move on. That seems like a perfect scenario to me. Why would you let that guy go to the second round or the third round, where now you only have control over him for 4 years, and realistically, after 2 years, you're going to have to sit down at a table with him because he's not playing for that second round or that third round money if he is your starting running back, right? Because they have agents, and if they don't have agents, they have eyes. They know what you're going to do to them when they get 25. They know what you're going to do. They know that you're going to say, oh, well, we don't see the value in a second contract for running backs, so we're not going to pay you what you're worth. We're going to pay you what the market value says. And we as fans, we just eat up this rhetoric that people put out there. We don't even try to look for ourselves to see if this is real. We don't try to see for ourselves if what's being said has any merit. We just take people on face value. Why? Because they're in a position that they didn't even necessarily earn. I will say this for the Giants and Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen worked his way up from a scout. He worked his way up. I think that he's done a great job with the Giants, but he's made mistakes. He's made big mistakes. Big mistakes. Nobody wants to talk about it because everybody looks through those rose-colored glasses at, oh, well, they won and they went to the playoffs and they won a playoff game, even though if we were being honest about their run, first half success, second half not so successful. If we're being honest about the quarterback, just an average season. If we're being honest about the players and some of the players that they take, your right tackle right now looks like a bust. Does that mean that he'll be a bust in the future? No, But Evan Neal looks like a bust at right tackle right now. And the things that he does not do well, I'm hoping that they're able to be cleaned up by better technique, but it might just be he's not athletic enough to play out on the edge, to play at a right tackle where you have to take on Micah Parsons, where you have to block Azeez Ojulari's and Kayvon Thibodeau's. Like, he may just not be suited for that. He may be a guard. How long does the administration and coaching staff give him to be bad at right tackle? Because he was bad. Make no mistake about it. Don't make me get on the video and put together all of the missed blocks by this man. All of the sacks given up by this man. Let's just be honest about it. So as of right now, that pick by Joe Shane and Brian Dable does not look good. And no, we don't have to wait 5 years. Because when you pick a person with a top 5 pick, you should see it right now. When you pick a person with a top 10 pick, you should see it right now. You shouldn't have to wait. We see it in Kayvon Thibodeau right now. Is he where we want him to be? No, but we see it right now. Evan Neal doesn't look good right now. Cordell Flott doesn't look good right now. Nobody's projecting Cordell Flott to be the starting cornerback. If you have draft picks on day 1 or day 2 of the draft, you should be coming away with starters or people who have starting potential. You should not be taking projects with day 1 and day 2 picks. That is not how you have sustained success in the NFL. Neal doesn't look good. Flott, it doesn't look good. Wan'Dale Robinson, it does not look good. Daniel Bellinger, if he looked that great, then why did you go get Waller? If you thought he was going to be the next guy, why did you spend a 3rd round pick on another tight end? Oh, because you have to have 2, right? Yeah, you got to have 2, but you need 2 tight ends, and 1 tight end doesn't cost as much as Darren Waller costs. But we don't have cap space, right? I thought that was the big thing for the Giants and why they can't. Never mind. You know what? We can give praise when praise is due. We can give praise where praise is due. But we don't have to praise and just wholeheartedly follow or believe in people. You know what? As a fan, I get it. When they talk about Jameis Winston, I forgive a lot of the interceptions that Jameis Winston threw because I believe that a lot of the interceptions that he threw were him doing too much, right? We're down. Jameis Winston's instinct is to do everything in his power to bring you back. And so a 2-interception game from Jameis Winston could turn into a 4-interception game from Jameis Winston because he's never going to stop trying to throw you back into the game. That's to his detriment. If he was like Andy Dalton, who won't risk putting the ball in harm, then he would never have interception issues. Sometimes a player's greatest gift is their greatest curse. And Jameis Winston's greatest gift is his belief in himself. But that came at a cost on a team and an organization that was not willing, and a fan base that was not willing to explore why it was that this man was throwing interceptions. And so now revisionist history from people will tell you that Jameis Winston wasn't even that great of a prospect. That's what people will say. Meanwhile, Jameis Winston is still sitting around here as a guy who threw for 5,000 yards in a season. Doesn't matter why you have to throw for 5,000 yards in a season. The fact that you threw for 5,000 yards in a season is something. He's still a guy who, when given the opportunity to start, has that cannon, has mobility, has the respect of players, and that's what never gets talked about. How can someone be so universally like disliked by the people outside and be loved by players? Why are we so willing to listen and accept what administrators say and what coaches say in the NFL, but we don't listen to the players? When Lamar Jackson says something, he's lying. But when the Ravens report something, oh, they're telling the truth. It's because as fans, we've been conditioned. I'm saying we've been conditioned to believe in the management. We've been conditioned to believe that the player doesn't know what they're talking about, that they're just a player, that they're just a pawn. Well, guess what? In the NFL, these guys are doctors of football. They have played enough football in their life where they have doctoral degrees in football. These are not the low-level workers in the game. They are doctors of football. They have a doctorate of football in playing. The coach may only have like a bachelor's degree in coaching. These NFL coaches, some of these high-level college coaches, they may only have bachelor-level degrees in coaching, because depending upon how they got their job, they may not have had to do what Joe Schoen had to do. They may not have had to work up the ladder. Brian Daboll's been some places. He's had to learn some stuff. He probably has a master's degree in coaching. Right? He probably has a master's degree in coaching. I'm not talking about literal, by the way. I'm talking about in a figurative nature of education. He probably has a master's degree. Might even be a specialist. Could be working towards his doctorate. But we can't like dismiss the doctors of football playing as if they don't know anything. So we as fans can't get in our own way. I remember, man, I used to be such a fan of Tony Dungy that I was willing to forgive the fact that he and Herm Edwards, I love Herm Edwards, and Lovie Smith to a certain extent too, that yo, shout out to my boy Brandon Howard, who said that Brian Daboll's got a watermelon head. He better have a doctorate in coaching with all that head he's got. Shout out to my big bro Shimmy. Giants fans are interesting fans. They and Cowboys fans and even Eagles fans. You know, they're all that whole NFC East, it has fan bases who are really interesting when it comes to how they look at their teams. Like how high they are on players and then how low they are on players quickly. It's really interesting to me. But back to my point, like these players, they know what they're talking about. And here's what I'll tell you. If a player like Kadarius Toney can have success with 3 different coaching staffs, with 3 different front offices, then we have to ask ourselves why they were not able to have success with one. But make no mistake, Joe Schoen has done a great job with the Giants so far, but he has made big mistakes. Big mistakes. Big mistake last offseason, not drafting a center. Could have drafted a center, had the chance to get a Tyler Lindenbaum, didn't take it. Had a chance to get a center in the second day, didn't do it. Didn't bring in a legitimate center. Allowed this team to play with Feliciano at center and a beat up Nick Gates, who even when he was healthy was not a great center. That is a mistake. He let go of a tight end who had elite receiving skills, only to then turn around and trade for a tight end who's older with elite receiving skills. We want to applaud him for bringing in Darren Waller after we just saw what Evan Ingram did down in Jacksonville once he was with a quarterback and an offense that was willing to use him the right way. Are we sure that this regime knows how to incorporate two tight ends who are pass receiving into an offense? We give Mike Kafka a lot of credit for stuff that he never had a hand in. He didn't do any game planning in Kansas City. And from what I've seen so far, I don't really know how much he is doing with New York. I'm sure he's involved in the game planning, but I'm sure that Brian Daboll is heavily involved. I want to see if Mike Kafka has to do what a guy like Eric Bieniemy had to do. Is Mike Kafka going to have to go to another team as an offensive coordinator in order to prove that he actually runs the show? Because people believe it's Brian Daboll? Of course not. Of course he's not. Why? Because he looks the part. He looks the part. Young, white. That's the list. That's the list. Look young, look white. Well, I should flip it. Look white, look young. And then you're on your way to a head coach. Right? Shout out to the brother down in Miami as the head coach, Mike McDaniel. Shout out to the brother down there. But that same logic applied for him as well. Look white, be young. Like that's the formula in the NFL to get fast tracked to a head coaching position. Sometimes you don't even have to be young in order to get that head coaching spot. Sometimes being young isn't even required. We don't see it because we're blind to it sometimes as fans. But we should take a step back and look at some of the moves that our favorite organizations. I mean, I've been banging on the Bucs and some of the moves that they've made. It's been terrible. I love the Bucs. They make it hard to be fans. They make it super hard to be fans. While all of these people are out here applauding what the Bucs have done, like in the drafts, I'm like, really? If they've done so well, then why are we still so bad here? Why are we still so bad in this? If they've done so well with drafting defensive backs, then why every year is somebody mocking a defensive back to Tampa Bay? I'll wait. If they've done so well at drafting, why is it that the offensive line is in shambles? Shambles. They should just be able to go and draft more linemen. I could tell them who to draft. Guarantee they're not going to be bust. Why? Because most of the times the people that I think the team should draft are not bust. I'm pretty good at this thing. And I don't have all of the insider information that they have, and I don't know more than they do. I just know what I know. I know what I know. And as a fan, it's okay to be critical of the move. Luke Easterling was critical of Byron Leftwich as an offensive coordinator. I didn't agree with him, but he has every right to be critical of Byron Leftwich as an offensive coordinator. When the offense doesn't do what it's supposed to do and you have Tom Brady, it's okay to be critical. My issue was that there was no criticism of Tom Brady, and I thought really a lot of it was on Brady and less on Leftwich. But that's okay. When we turn the blinders off, both things can be true. It could have been partly Leftwich's fault, and it could have been partly Tom Brady's fault. That's a possibility. The same way that in New York, the reason that Kadarius Toney didn't work can be partly on Toney and partly on the regime. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy. You do this thing a few times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Till next time, peace.